Hi, welcome to Chad Silversmithing. Before we get too far into the video, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, that helps get my channel promoted and I appreciate it. I also love it when people leave comments, so let me know what you'd like to see, any kind of constructive criticism. How you do things is always interesting for me to hear. All that stuff is great. Today's multiple project video is going to include 3 simple silver rings that I think are good sellers and are pretty easy to make. So we'll give that a try today. Before we do though, I would like to thank some groups of people. I wanted to thank my patrons over on Patreon. They're a great group of people who've created this wonderful community over there, and I really appreciate not only the financial support that they give me, but also the fact that they've done that over there, and that's really nice. I look forward to chatting with them over there, so thanks for that, you guys. The other group is my YouTube subscribers, and we just passed 13,000 recently, which is amazing. Thank you for that. Thank you also for the really nice comments that you leave sometimes, as well as the financial contributions like the Buy Me a Coffee and the Super Thanks. Silver being as expensive as it is right now, that really helps out a lot, so thank you for that. All right, let's get started on these 3 projects. This is one of my design idea books that I use to sketch up my ideas in before I do a video, and I find them pretty useful. They've got this nice grid pattern in the background that helps me to keep things sort of symmetrical because I'm not terribly good at freehand drawing. I do find though that I get a better result if I sketch something up in advance, so these are available on my merch store if you're interested. So today we're doing 3 simple rings that I think are pretty good sellers. I'm going to do a crossover ring like this, and I initially didn't love this one, mostly because you have to kind of bump it up. This is one that I made a long time ago, and my wife snapped it up because she liked it. So I didn't love the fact that it bumped over like that, but she really likes it. So I think I'm going to make another one of those today. People seem to like this model. I've made a few over the years, and they sold almost immediately. So I think it's a different pattern wire than this one, but we'll try it and see how it comes out. Second one, this double heart ring. I've seen variations of this over the years many times, and I've made a few, and they almost always get snapped right up because people seem to love hearts. So simple to make and pretty good seller. And then finally, I've made a few eye rings over the years. This is a slight variation of ones I've made. I'm going to make this a cat's eye, and so I'm going to have kind of a slit in the middle, but it's all going to be wire, and this is going to be, the outside is going to be 16 gauge round. The inside will probably be 20 or 18. I haven't decided which yet. As far as gauges go, you could, for this one, you can use any kind of pattern wire or even plain silver half round wire if you wanted to, but the stuff I'm using is about 3.5 millimeters wide, and the size that I'm making it is going to be about a size 7. So I took a piece of cardboard, actually this is how I did it, and I wrapped it around the mandrel twice and taped it together, and then I measured how long this was, and it was about 122 millimeters. So, and that was at about size 7 on the mandrel. So you could do the same thing to get various sizes if you wanted to try getting some different sizes. This one's going to be 16 gauge round, which is 1.3 millimeters, and this one's 16 gauge round, 1.3 millimeters, and if I use 18, it's 1.02 millimeters for the inside parts of the eye, and if I use 20 gauge, it's about 0.79 millimeters. So we'll start with this one, and like I said, it needs to be a piece of that 122 millimeters long, roughly. So we'll start with that. Here's the pattern wire I have. It's kind of a leafy looking one. So let's start by cutting off the end here. Give it a little file. You can use your miter vise jig if you want to for something like that. Let's see, what did I say, 122? Okay, there's my 122 there. I think these are all beginner projects, so this might be good practice projects for you if you're new to this. Let's file this other side. I had this discussion with my wife earlier about the proportions of each of the, since it kind of creates two rings. She likes the fact that the first one I made there was one of the rings is slightly bigger, so it fits nicely on a pinky, because it gets a little wider up here and it's narrower down here. And I always looked at that as a flaw, but she says it makes it more comfortable. So, okay, so let's wrap this around the narrower part of the ring manual. Remember, I got to go over the top of it like that. And then I think I'm going to take these ends and manually get them to be pointing right towards each other, and then we'll just solder it that way. And then we can do a little shaping to get it to match nicely. This is, like I said, it's pretty simple to make these. I may have cut this a little big. I have a tendency to cut things too big because it's much easier to cut a little piece out and redo it than it is to add a piece in. So that's my philosophy. But you definitely want these two ends pushing together. That's not bad. I'm going to do this so I get less chance of getting any flow through into the pattern wire. I'm just going to dangle it off of this. So it's kind of horizontal, maybe. Maybe I'll pinch it in here. That's pretty good. We'll just do it like that. And then I'm going to solder it on the inside here. So let me make sure I have a few pieces of solder over here already. If you're new to my channel, I use hard silver sheet solder primarily. And I use a liquid flux called My-T-Flux, which is a self-pickling flux. So we'll flux that first, and then we'll use a little bit of solder on the inside and get that to flow. So my torch is a Silversmith model, which is the settling air torch that they make. It's a great torch. I love this torch. You're doing something like this with trying to prevent it from getting too much into the pattern. It has a tendency when it flows to go towards the hottest point. So since I'm heating from above, when it does flow, I want to kind of rotate it underneath here to get a little heat on the outside edge. That way, generally, we can ensure that we get full penetration of that crack there, and it looks like we did. So let's go ahead and cool that off. Take a minute and kind of smooth out any excess solder that's on the inside. So I'm going to put the solder seam towards the bottom in case it's visible. Got ourselves a ring, and just because it's being shaped on the mandrel, one side is going to be slightly slightly bigger than the other, and that's what she likes. So I think if she likes it, probably other people will like it. Alright, so let's let that one pickle and we'll move on to the second one. The second one, in order to figure out how long of a piece I wanted, I figured about a size 7 on this one too. And I had this round, but I squished it by accident. I used a piece of 22 gauge silver, and I just kind of generally shaped it into what it's going to look like to give me a rough estimate of how long. And so now I can straighten it out and use this as a guide on how big of a piece to cut. And I can modify it as we make it to see if I like the length or not. Because we're going to use a slightly thicker wire here, 16 gauge, which is, well, actually quite a bit thicker wire. But this one ended up being about 130 millimeters, roughly. So here's some 20 gauge. Not 20 gauge, I'm sorry, 16 gauge. So we need to make little hearts. So let's I want to make 2 lobes like that, and I want it to have a sharp point. I'm going to file a notch in this. So, and I think probably right about we're right about there. And we're going to file a notch right there on the outside. Should allow us to make it more into a heart shape like that. So in order to get that to not be fragile and breakable, I'm going to go ahead and solder it right now. Now I do something called pick soldering a lot, and it's a really useful skill to have. So if you're interested in learning how to do that, I have a video up there you can check out. But what it entails is picking up a little tiny bit of your solder on the end of a soldering pick, heating the whole thing to the point where it's ready to flow, and touching it on there. It should just jump on there. So let's do that. Pick up a little bit of solder here. If you're new to silversmithing, one of the things that you pretty much always have to do when you're soldering silver is heat the entire piece up to the soldering temperature. It's not really, it doesn't work very well if you try to point solder. So we've got to get this whole thing pretty hot. And then we can bump it up a few degrees to get that last little temperature. Okay, let's pull it off. Alright, should make another lobe on our heart. We can kind of make these stylized if you want to. Kind of like that, actually. let's solder that one together now. You could probably make 10 of these in an hour, I would guess, once you've done a couple of them. Pretty fast to make. In my experience, it's always good to have some items at shows and things when you're selling that are, you know, in different price ranges. And this might be something you could put in the, you know, in your display that is on the lower side. Not everybody can afford to drop $400 at a show, but most people can afford, you know, 25 or 40 bucks. So, okay, so let's. So for this notch, let's go by right there. I don't even need to keep it that shape if I want to. So I got that kind of bent and laid out. Let's solder that one. If I was going to do 10, like I said, I'd probably make it kind of a assembly line is the word I'm looking for. Kind of like that, probably. So I'm going to cut that off where those two meet. Solder that together. I'm going to spend a little time getting these kind of smoothed out. So you could configure it that way. You could probably switch it to the other side. But either way, that's the basic idea. You could change the look a little bit, you know, by changing the configuration a little bit. That's kind of a nice look. But I think those would be pretty good sellers. So let's throw that one in the pickle. It's also a little bit adjustable, so that's another selling point. And it's thin enough to where you could bend it yourself if you need to change the size a little bit. So a third selling point. Okay, so I think on this one, you know, from there to there is, you know, it's going to be bigger than 15 but less than 20 probably. So let's cut it at 20, mark it at 20, because I'm going to use that same kind of wire here. So let's just file this in flat. Make a mark at about 20, and that's where we'll file a notch so we can make a sharp bend. There. It's a little bigger, but it's probably okay. So based on that other one, we got about 40 millimeters in that, which probably equates to about what we did for those two. So, and we cut that one to be, I think we'll probably be okay if we cut it about right there. I'm just kind of estimating. As long as it's not too short, I think we'll be okay. All right, so I want to file this just a little bit so it kind of meets up with that better. that's it. Okay, that's pretty symmetrical. Now I need to make a piece of wire that's in a circle that fits right in there for the pupil of the eye. Or not the pupil, the iris of the eye, I guess it is. Now this is 20. Should I do it that skinny? I think I'm going to do it in 18 if I can. The middle part I may do 20, we'll see. That's going to be just a little too big, but I can kind of manually size it down. I think that's about right, because I want it to look like it's kind of inside of the eyelids here. So what I think what I'll do is I'll solder this closed, and then I'll file a flat side on either side before we put it in. That looks pretty good. Now I think I'm going to have to use 20 gauge for the other piece. This 20. That's 18. I need very small pieces of solder for this one, probably. So we can solder the eye in here, or the round part of the eye. Okay, still have a few little tiny ones, hopefully. That's weird. So I'm just going to put a little spiral on the end here, I think. Let's start there and see how that is. Kind of like that. Once that's polished up, I think that'll be really kind of cool. So let's let that pickle, and then I'll bring you back the final result in a while. So we got them polished up. Here's this one. Let's see what I was going for there. Here's our little heart one. Like I said, you could configure those in a lot of ways. I changed it a little bit from what I drew, but I think I like this one. And then there's my little, I did this backwards from what I was originally doing. I guess it doesn't really matter too much, but either way, I think that one's kind of cool. Something different. Someone will love it. So, all right, I'll take some better pictures and put them at the end. Okay, well, that was the 3 simple rings that are good sellers. I hope that you enjoyed that and found it to be valuable. If you did, make sure to hit the like button before you leave, and take a moment and check out a few other videos. I have over 350 videos on my channel now, so there's almost certainly something else you'll find interesting. Lots of projects and lots of different skill levels. I think it's a useful resource for anyone, whether you're a beginner or you're just looking for some interesting ideas. So check those out, and then subscribe to my channel. Make sure you do that. Don't forget to check out the video description. There's some important links there. There's a link about safety if you're learning how to do this. There's a link to my merch store if you want to get either that ebook I was talking about or one of those nice design idea books. Those are handy to have. Those are both available. There's even a link to my Patreon if you want to check out that community. So do those things. Come back and see me again. Take care. Happy silversmithing.